More murder and mayhem today, Sandy. Are you ready for it?
Bring it on, Ross. That's what I say.
This is going to be a great one. I read up a bunch of this. So weird. So, everybody, welcome back to The Long Game. We are on a mission to demystify the science that shapes our lives and unpack how great ideas built here in Scotland become real-world medicines, devices, and new companies at the cutting edge of life sciences. And Sandy, I bet you're wondering how we're going to link that to murder. I'm Ross Cagan, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine at University of Glasgow.
And I'm Sandy Weir, Tech Innovation Leader and Strategic Program Manager, joining today again from Edinburgh. And today is another crime day, Ross. There's been a murder, as they used to say on Taggart. So we're heading south from Glasgow today. We're going to Dumfriesshire, a town called Moffat, which sits in what we call the Southern Uplands. And we're traveling a little bit back in time, 1935. And this quiet spot became the center of a case that would redefine the boundaries of medical science, Ross.
Yeah, we're talking about somebody named Dr. Buck Ruxton. I love that name. His birth name was Bakhtiar Champa Rustamji Ratanji Hakim, but we're going to call him Buck. And he actually formally and legally changed his name to Buck Ruxton. And he became known in the press as the Savage Surgeon, who performed the infamous Jigsaw murders, aka Bodies Under the Bridge. It's a pretty nasty story, I have to say, Sandy, but for our audience, it's also a case study in data integrity and, weirdly, advanced pattern recognition.
Yeah, imagine the competitor tries to completely wipe the drive of a project so that you can't see what they've done. Well, Ross, that's exactly what Buck Ruxton did to his victims. He used his surgical skills to try and make the bodies unidentifiable. And he didn't just kill them. He tried to, what shall we say, encrypt the evidence.
Well, Buck Ruxton was an Indian-born physician. He practiced down in Lancaster. Eventually, he was originally trained in India, but he came on over. Isabella Ruxton, his wife, she was born Isabella Proudfoot Kerr. She was a very outgoing mother of three who lived in a common law relationship with Ruxton. That's actually an unusual arrangement for the time. She was 34 years old when she was killed. Bella, as she was known, she loved dancing, she loved people, and she especially loved her three children. I should probably mention here that this story, the more I dug into, the weirder it got. Buck had a previous wife from an arranged marriage back in India, and I cannot figure out if they were ever divorced. And incidentally, Bella, also previously married for a few weeks. I'm pretty sure, got divorced. And from what I can piece together, they had a classic abusive relationship where he was an abusive, then apologetic. And she continually returned to him and made excuses for his abusive behavior. At one point, she actually reported him as abusing her to the police, and then a day later returned to him. So let's just say they had a very complicated, stormy relationship. And in September 1935, September 14th, as I recall, he would be overcome by bouts of jealousy, and driven by jealousy, what he decided was her infidelity. He strangled and then stabbed Isabella, and then bludgeoned and strangled their housemaid, Mary Jane Rogerson, probably because she had witnessed the murder. And actually, this is where we move it into the long game territory, because he was a doctor. He knew exactly what the police looked for: fingerprints, birthmarks, scar. They looked at teeth. And what did they do, Sandy?
Yeah, so he performed, I guess, what we call a surgical data wipe.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really grim. He extensively mutilated the bodies before dumping them over a bridge near the town of Moffat. It's pretty grim. It's pretty grisly. They were found in the ravine by investigators, and they didn't know how many people they were looking at. It was such a horrendous crime scene. So they couldn't begin to discover at that point who they were, let alone, how many people they were dealing with.
Yeah, and we chose to not get into the deep details of this. There's a lot of detail out there, but we can probably
Yeah.
let that lie for the most part, except where we need to make some points. But let's just say it was a mess of corrupted data. So the police called in the big guns from universities of Glasgow and Edinburgh. So you see, people can work together across Glasgow and Edinburgh, including in particular the stars of our show today, John Glaister and Professor James Brash.
Yeah, and I guess in business terms, when your data is corrupt, Ross, as you well know, you can't just look at it. You have to invent new tools to help to reconstruct it. And that, of course, is where Messrs. Glaister and Brash really came to their own.
Yeah. So Professor Brash was an anatomist, so that was important. And he treated this like a literal jigsaw puzzle. There's a reason why this murder was known as the Jigsaw murders in the press. And the way the case got its name is he spent months reassembling the remains. And I have to say, there were a lot of puzzle pieces, shall we say, to be put together. But the brilliant thing that he did, and the reason that they've landed on the long game, and we will have to put a picture of this up. The picture is pretty wild. His real innovation was a technique called photographic superimposition.
This is where it gets really fascinating for us from a tech perspective, Ross. He took the skulls that they found and very cleverly, and a massive breakthrough at the time, he projected life-size photographs of his suspected victims over the top of them. So he was looking for that one-to-one match between the bone structure and the living face, literally piecing things back together as a jigsaw puzzle, as you mentioned.
As you say, basically it was a 1930s version of a digital twin. And it was fortunate that they had pictures. In those days, that wasn't a guarantee. Now, of course, everybody has buckets of pictures, including pictures that were aligned properly. So because of that, and they had this particular picture of Bella, they could match the alignment of the eyes, the jawline, the brow of the skull, basically just placing it over the picture. And having done that, Brash proved, really for the first time in a court of law, that these unidentifiable remains were actually a perfect match for the missing woman. I thought it was pretty genius. What'd you think?
Incredible. I mean, it's always the same, Ross. When you look at these things and you think, you consider what's been done, it's like, oh yeah, well, that's pretty obvious. But when you come into that for the very, very first time, no one has done this before. That ability to be able to turn that low quality data into this high confidence evidence through these innovative visualizations, incredible. I mean, it's a massive leap forward. And indeed, it was a huge leap forward at the time for forensic biotech.
Yeah, Sandy, they had another problem, and that was the timeline. So they found the bodies under a bridge, so it was also known as bodies under the bridge. I think in those days in particular, newspapers would go wild with these sorts of things. So anyway, they had to establish that a timeline would make sense because if as the defense, you could just argue, what are you talking about? These bodies have been there for months. So a young woman was wandering by and found these random packages of bodies, and there's like an arm sticking out and these sorts of things. And they were all scattered in this little tributary. And if they had just been there for months, then the argument that it is her wouldn't have held since lots of people had seen her fairly recently. So basically, this was a real problem for them. So what the prosecution needed to do was to determine the post-mortem interval. So how long ago were these bodies murdered? Basically, the time since death.
And Ross, they used a biological sensor to do that, right? You're going to tell some more.
Yeah, well, this is right up my bug alley since I'm a bug guy. So they used maggots, which as a Drosophila guy, I'm a little offended by that word, but we'll go with it. Basically, they found larvae and pupae on the bodies that showed them the life cycle of the blowfly. Okay, so blowflies are very common around Lancaster at that time. They were almost certainly going to have been laid shortly after the bodies were dumped. And incidentally, side note, one of the arguments that the person must have taken the bodies and dumped them far away from where they actually lived was if they had just gone shortly down the road and had dumped it in the local river instead of in this tributary, all of these parts would have just gone down the river and they would have never been found. But dumping in the tributary suggested that it was somebody who was not familiar with the area. Just side note for all those who are thinking of dumping a body. This is actionable information we're getting here in the long game. Anyway, please don't murder people. So what they did was they calculated the temperature that the outdoors was over the past couple of weeks. And they looked at the stage of development of the blowflies. So they found larvae, they found pupae, but the pupae hadn't gone all the way through to adults yet. And so that gives you a clock, a minimum time of how long those bodies were dumped there. The exact time would depend on exactly when the blowflies came by and laid eggs, but you could tell a minimum time. So that would pinpoint the time of arrival within a few hours. And this broke Ruxton's alibi that said he had been hanging out with his wife and so on after the murder, because the insects had reached all the way to the pupal stage, which meant the remains were sitting on this site not for months, but for about 12 to 14 days. Okay? That means the bodies were dumped on or before the 17th of September. And just to remind everybody of the timeline, they were murdered on the 14th of September. In other words, the insects contradicted any timeline that said, oh yeah, these bodies were dumped more recently or they were dumped long ago. It pretty much put a short interval on when they had been killed.
I don't know about you, Ross. I'm a big fan of all these detective series on TV and thrillers that, always a holiday thriller is always a joy as well. And this whole using these insect larvae, that's become quite a recognized method in forensic science. And we can really consider this as the sort of nature's timestamp. Of course, today in modern forensic entomology, we use DNA, barcoding, gene expression for profiling to identify insect species. So it's got a lot more complex. And scientists can now recover victims' human DNA directly from the insect tissue. But back in 1935, just using insects as a diagnostic tool, that was incredibly groundbreaking.
Yeah. So Ruxton was convicted. And he was executed by hanging in 1936. But the legacy of the Jigsaw murders is that it actually forced the medical community to standardize how we identify remains today. And I should just add a few side notes here, or final notes. I guess final notes, since he was hung. He did confess. Okay, so when we say he definitely did it, he actually did it. I've got his confession here. I killed Mrs. Ruxton in a fit of temper because I thought she had been with a man. And I was mad at the time. Mary Jane Roderson was president at the time, so I had to kill her. So basically, to your point, Sandy, it really proved that science, if you give it enough time, enough smarts, and the right tools, you can basically use it to reverse engineer the truth.
Yeah, and I'm expecting to read a grant application where you've used those exact words at some point.
Yes.
Give it enough time and the right tools, we can deliver this. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And for the bio entrepreneurs listening, this case really is a reminder that interdisciplinary collaboration is where the magic happens. You had to bring together the anatomists, the entomologists, the photographers, all working together on the one product to find the truth. And Ross, today, modern startups, they're doing exactly the same thing, right? By combining AI and new biological discoveries, clinical data to solve what were impossible problems or the impossible problems of the future.
Sure. And just to point out a couple of things, our first murder, we had talked about a doctor who had murdered his wife and mother-in-law. Now here we've got a doctor who murdered his wife and basically their nanny. So I don't know what's going on with doctors, but apparently they're just not great murderers, at least not as clever as perhaps they think they are. And more importantly, you can begin to see step by step the accumulation of knowledge and ways to get at forensics and these sorts of things are really starting to think out and professionalize efforts to do it. And they're really beginning to bring, and we can see it here, scientists and doctors on board to try to think these things out. What do you think?
I agree. And it's the creativity that we really admire. It's the creative thinking that sees beyond the bounds of the problem as they have it today to the solution that they're trying to achieve, and that creative thinking to close that gap. What can we use? How can we approach this differently? It's the same sort of creative spark and excitement that generates that brings us to our subject matter today, Ross. So we might not be discovering the grisly truth around murders and the crimes that took place, but it's that same creative genius. And well, I shouldn't use the word genius when we're talking about ourselves, but it's the same creative spark and excitement that keeps us in the long game.
Absolutely. Problem solving. No, I like it.
Problem solving.
Well, after that spectacular, grim historical detour,
it was pretty grim.
And don't worry, people, we've got more. What do you think, Sandy? Is it time?
Yeah, Ross, I think we've had enough talking about grim historical detours. Let's cheer ourselves up a little bit. Let's get to our wee bit of joy. What have you brought to us this week for your wee bit of joy, Ross?
Well, Sandy, for my wee bit of joy, I do bring some joy, so hopefully this will be a break from jigsawing people. I want to talk about my first ever in attendance Celtic match. Sorry. I finally made it. So my wife and her family and I went to see the Celtic last night play Dundee. First, a match of the new season. Celtic came all the way back last season to get yet another title. I would think the fans would get kind of bored. The fact they always win, either them or the Rangers. But I talked to the fans and they're like, no, we need more. I kind of down with that, I guess. So we went them to see them to play Dundee. They were clearly the better team, even though it was just 1-0. And I really did love it. So we did start out with some pretty dodgy pregame food. And we were even a semi-fancy. There was the high end. We didn't go there, but the semi-fancy food bars.
Was it pie?
But that didn't
Ross?
matter.
Can I ask? Was it a Scotch pie? That's the traditional.
That came at halftime.
Oh, that came at halftime. Right.
Yeah. We went back there and they gave out free Scotch pies, and it was absolutely worth every penny. They had macaroni and cheese pie and meat pies.
No sausage rolls.
They also had sausage rolls. I have to say, they did. So. Yeah, and I got it. That's a tradition. And of course, we ate them even though we were completely full from the previous food. There's something about free food. Anyway, so, but in that same food place before we marched off to our seats was a guy with a guitar singing traditional Celtic songs. And he was pretty good. People were singing along with him. I've never seen anything quite like this in American sports. Really loved it. And it reminds me that Celtic is not just a football club. It's really a community institution. It's about their history, and there were a lot of people holding up signs of Sinn Féin and other things like that. They really know about their history quite well. Immigration, family, politics, charity, making a lot of noise. I actually had some contacts with the Celtic Foundation in my role as founding the McNabb Center for Cancer Innovation. And as part of our outreach, we were told, just go talk to the Celtic Foundation. And they were lovely. They were incredible and very embedded into the community. So they're very well respected. And it's really hard to explain their place in this community until you really watch the whole thing play out. And incidentally, in terms of Celtic, I have a quote here. Pope John Paul II apparently once said, amongst all unimportant subjects, football is by far the most important. So they had ultras in the corner. The Green Brigade they somehow managed to sing songs at the top of their voice the entire match without any stop. It was really impressive. They are complete maniacs, and we had an incredible time. What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, I mean that sounds awesome, Ross. I mean, I've never been to Celtic Park. I've never experienced watching Celtic. I have seen a couple of English Premiership games. My son's a big Arsenal fan, so right. I guess I've had a bit of exposure to that. And of course, the star player, as I understand from the other night, Kieran Tierney. And Kieran Tierney famously was one of the most expensive exports from Celtic to the English Premiership. He played for Arsenal, and then he's come back again. And of course, I think he's one of their best players. I think he provided, if I remember the sporting article that I read yesterday, he provided the cross that I think Norwegian player Nygren scored with, right?
I think that's right. I haven't gotten down to figure out who did what. I was just... Yeah, I have to go back and read about it.
He's a real star. He's a real star. So
yeah, I know they're pretty excited about him. There's a new guy, Hoff, H-O-G-H, but they lost their scoring star, Maeda, who's now also moved up into the Premier League.
Exactly. And this is what happens is, of course, there's a conveyor belt of talent that comes and goes. But yeah, amazing. Fantastic.
Yeah. How
I
about you? What's your wee bit?
well, I thought the banter and the beautiful game. I thought you'd be a Jags fan. Partick Thistle is kind of more
Oh,
up your way.
you know what I'm a fan of?
Yeah,
Their mascot. Have you
yes,
seen their
yeah. It's
mascot?
crazy. It's crazy.
That is second to the Philadelphia Flyers hockey team's. Can't remember the name of their mascot, but they have a crazy mascot. But Partick Thistle's mascot is a close second. That thing is deranged looking.
It's like a fever dream.
Yeah, we'll have to put up a picture.
We certainly will.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my wee bit of joy this week is quite kind of a different pace, Ross, quite a different pace. Helen and I headed over to Argyll the weekend, and we picked up a boat hire on Loch Goyle. It's a beautiful part, the Scotland, absolutely beautiful. And this was long overdue. This was a birthday present that my kids had kindly gave me, and we had a truly wonderful day. Have you ever been to Loch Goyle, Ross? Do you know where that is?
I have not. Tell me more. And most importantly, don't bury the lead or they're puffins.
Spoiler, Ross, there's no puffins. At least we didn't see puffins, but we did see a lot of seals. It was a wonderful afternoon. The sun came out. It was really quite pleasantly warm. And it was lovely to take a boat down the sea loch. So a sea loch, it's a bit like a fjord if you're familiar with the sort of same type of geography in Scandinavia. Yeah, I think we travelled down Loch Goyle, and I think I've ever got the geography right. That's kind of southwest, I think, to an even longer, bigger sea loch called Loch Long. You might have heard of that because that's where quite famously the UK nuclear deterrent is based at Faslane Naval Base. And it was really funny because when we were getting the introduction to the boat, and the chap that owns the boat shed, he was telling us where to go, where not to go, how close to the seal colony to get to, how far to stay away. But he said, stay away from the naval base. Don't in any terms go anywhere near those guys.
Yeah.
We don't want to tempt any problems with the MOD police. And so, we listened to that. We did just that. It was a bit choppier, I have to say, when we got down to Loch Long. It's the latitude or the sort of the geography. It's kind of running southwest to northeast, and the wind was just channeling right up the loch. So it was quite blustery, and there was a bit of a little bit of white water and stuff. It was quite interesting with the boat. But unfortunately, we'd had hoped to see some porpoises there because in the guide they said that there's a good chance you can see some porpoises, but unfortunately we didn't see them. But we did see, we turned around, we came back into Loch Goyle, we did see a rather curious seal in the middle of the loch. And
cool.
And that gave me the notion, because we brought fishing rods, and I suggested to Helen that if that seal's hanging around here, there must be fish. So we tried to catch some mackerel. Unfortunately, no luck, but it was fun fishing, even in the sunshine, even though we didn't have any luck. And actually, I'm quite glad we avoided all the blood and gore of bringing any fish back. Much as we've loved to talk about this murder today, when the blood and gore is that close, it's quite nice to ignore it. Anyway, I really recommend it. It was wonderfully relaxing. We had a great day out, and I realize I really do love boats. I love being on the water. I've got a sea kayak, and it made me think I don't get out on that enough. And maybe someday I wouldn't harbour a little bit of an ambition to have a yacht maybe at one point. What do you think, Ross? Are you at home in a boat? Have you ever done any sailing? Does it light you up?
Well, so I used to be a whitewater canoeist. I did some serious expeditions, like a month-long one up into the Arctic Circle. Discussion for another day. Yeah.
You can't just drop that in. That's
yeah. Well, you ask. So I'm happy to bounce out with your kayak, although we thought that kayaks were too easy. So we did the whole Class 6 river in an open face boat because we thought it'd be harder. But yes, I've been sailing. I myself am not checked out to sail, so I just do whatever my buddy Andrew
Skipper
tells me.
Yeah,
the skipper. Thank you. Skipper tells me. So over on the Scottish West Coast, we're going to do it again in a month. So I'm super chuffed about that. Also, side note, you're talking about fishing. Just very quickly, I grew up in New Jersey, so not a ton of fishing. And so I was shocked to find out that tuna, I assumed they were tiny little fish because they came in small cans. And then when I saw a tuna mounted on a wall, when I was like, I don't know, late teens, I was stunned to find out it was actually a big fish. So
yeah,
I guess
some of them are huge. Some of them are enormous. Yeah.
And how they get those big fish in those little cans, I have no idea. So
that's a theme for another podcast,
yes,
not our
right.
podcast.
How to fit big fish in small can. And so next time, Sandy, we're going to shift gears to look at how Sir Ian Fleming discovered antibiotics and how the bioeconomics would have been very different if he had done this today.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that topic. That will be great fun. A great story as well.
Yeah.
So until then, Ross, I suggest we keep the heat, and the best of luck, everyone. Please continue playing the long game.
Yeah. Ciao. See you, Sandy.
Bye for now.
Yeah, see the vision clear. We're here to run the long game. Blueprint set, no fear. Playing out the long game. The long game. Hey, the long game. The long game.